That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah. Look, I'm pretty good. Probably a better result than I was expecting on the weekend. So can't complain. A point on the board to start the season. So that's something good.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't complain at all. I think last week we had Dill predict a 1-1, and I thought it was new boy optimism, but it turned out it's a bit of beginner's luck, perhaps, with his prediction. We'll talk about the game, but I thought, if you'd offered a point before the kickoff, you'd definitely take it. Bristol City seemingly on the up this season, us, betting in a couple of new players and taking a little while to get going. I thought that was probably a loss in the making, but it wasn't to be. It was a good result in the end. In terms of the lineup, we had Panda in goal, Coyle, McLaughlin, Jones and Jacob at the back, Simon, Slater and Mellum in midfield with Giles, Oscar and Irma up front, which I guess was just about what we expected. I think we're doing our league lineup predictions before the game, before the lineups were announced, and I think I'd said Coyle on the left and Drame on the right, but it looks like he's out with a knock for a couple of weeks. But yeah, look, a pretty predictable lineup, which I guess was to be expected with the injuries and new signings probably not being up for a start, but a pretty reasonable one.
Yeah, I think overall, I think we mostly performed, or they mostly performed to a reasonable standard for the first fixture of the season, without anyone really, or certainly none of the starting 11 really, I guess, standing out. Or not standing out for the right reasons, I think. Jacob, poor Matty Jacob had a bit of a shocker. And I think McLaughlin, to be honest, probably wasn't much better. I think too slow to get the ball moving, and just a few little errors defensively that probably against a more clinical team probably would have cost us. But apart from that, I think everyone had a reasonable game. I think Jones was pretty good. There was a couple of really impressive defensive displays from him, tracking and recovering the ball. I think Simons went probably fairly sort of unnoticed, under the radar, but I think he was just almost like Seri has for us previously, just ticking along in the middle, just receiving and distributing, and even getting himself into some higher pockets every now and then. Good work rate from guys like Slater and Malem as well, with lots of lots of pressing, but probably not as much impact on the ball as Offit, unfortunately, but did get himself bowled over to win us a penalty. So I think, like, I don't know, Giles was like he whipped in. There was a cracker ball that he whipped in the first half that Oscar
should have been a goal.
Yeah, I think there was two. There was one that Oscar got onto, and there was another ball. May not have been Giles that whipped in, but there was another one that he that Oscar sort of lunged and slid for, but just missed.
I think that was Miller. Yeah.
So it was I think Oscar, like, getting in the right position and good balls coming in for him this time. So hopefully, this style of play will suit him a little bit more. I mean, did get on the score sheet with a well taken penalty, but my concern is, I think, against a stronger team, though we probably get exposed a little bit more. Some of those half chances that were created by our mistakes or our slow play from the back probably get picked up on and exposed a bit more. Panda, I mean, to be fair, Panda looked way more calm and composed and a proper goalkeeper than from those preseason displays. Still not perfect.
It is amazing that some players just seem to be able to flick that switch, because it seemed as if And I think I'd even said as much, maybe it was with you guys, like on the Tahalan back crossover, or it might have been last week, that it seemed as if some of his efforts for saves in preseason were the fact that, it's preseason, it doesn't actually matter that much if the ball goes in. Whereas for this game, flicking that switch to say, no, this is, the real thing. Maybe it's the competitiveness that now he's got a, competent number 2 behind him. But yeah, he seemed very much more at it against Bristol City.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of times off corners and set pieces where he came out to claim and missed, which is still a little bit concerning, but much better. Much better hands, much better reflexes. A couple of really important saves. I do think that, the goal was really frustrating that we conceded, and like a lot of the blame is getting placed on Jacob, but McLaughlin and Panda are just as much, I think, to blame in that all 3 of them had opportunities to go, we're not getting out here. Let's just put it out for a throw, boot it up the field, do something. But they all, tried to persist with that. Even Panda, I think he sort of he's playing around with the ball in the box to make the pass out to McLaughlin or to Jacob on the side. You go, you know what? It's they're pressing us really aggressively here. Let's not faff about with it at this moment, because I think in contrast to that, there were times earlier in the game where we had heaps of time to sort of to play that ball around and to find those pockets of space, and we decided we were just going to boot it up the field. So I think but I think obviously those decision making, or that aspect of decision making in regards to the system and how Walter wants them to play is only going to improve. Yeah. But I think that was something that frustrated me.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of Allsop under Rosenia last season, where there was a passage of the season where we did seem to be making a couple of those mistakes with playing around a little bit too much at the back. And it seemed as if Allsop then got the message in terms of, okay, I do need to just hit it long sometimes. And it seems like Panda's perhaps just going through that same learning process of when do I need to just get it out of the area and not take that risk. Because, yeah, there was a passage I remember in the second half where I think the commentator was almost sort of sort of emphasizing it was the fact that Jones would pass it to Panda, Panda passed to McLaughlin, McLaughlin passed to Panda, Panda passed to Jacob or whoever was on the left. And I went 6 or 7 passes back and forward between them. And I did have to chuckle a bit at there's this, I guess, expectation or mentality amongst City supporters to think, this is the post-Rosenia era. We're in for exciting, heart attack, non-stop, all action football. And we're seeing a lot of the same stuff that we saw under, and that's not necessarily a criticism. It's a learning process. And we're a lot of the players were bedded in to the Rosenia system, and maybe it's about changing things, but I don't think it's going to be an immediate overnight, flicking the switch change. Penny for Ajun's thoughts, I guess, when we were 1-0 down, what he was thinking about that as the first home display. Maybe, he said in the Q&A, maybe it's just, accepting that we had a bit of a weaker squad and this sort of result was coming. And I think the penalty definitely gives it a nicer sort of outcome than if we had gone down 1-0, but it was probably a little bit of a fortunate penalty, just in the sense I think it was definitely a penalty, but just that series of events was quite a fortunate one, I thought.
I guess probably it's not a huge concern, but you sort of look at it and you go, again, another home game where we're unable to take 3 points, which was one of the major criticisms of Rosenia, by the fan base and by Ajun, that
and also just not many chances.
We weren't making them
became
a fortress, a place where teams were afraid to come. They knew they wouldn't get points, and they come to us. But hopefully that'll turn around. But it was I think promising signs, but not certainly not the heart attack football that we had been promised just yet.
Interestingly, I mean, probably the most exciting passage of play for the game for me was just after Jarvis came on, and he picked the ball up and he skinned two Bristol City players when he cut inside. And it sort of makes you sort of sit up and go, oh, okay, this guy's got a bit about him. So I suspect he was recalled primarily because we just needed a few extra bodies with Longman out injured and things like that, just to offer something off the bench. But I'm sure that someone like Volta, looking at that, even just at that passage of play, would be saying, okay, maybe there's a bit of promise here. There's something we can work with, and he might have a more significant part to play in the squad than he would have. Because I think because of the way the loan rules work, he actually can't go back out on loan to another club now because he's played for us and for Shelbourne in the same season. But it's weird because Shelbourne have a different season to us. Like they finish in November. So I don't really like, maybe he can go out to another club in January. I don't know. But I guess he's just sort of with us for at least the next 6 months. But I think he showed plenty to say that he has a part to play.
Yeah, I thought he was really promising. He's one that I've been sort of like keeping an eye on a little bit over the last couple of years, because I thought he's been a player who's had potential and seemed to be producing on loan and in the under 21s and all those sorts of other arenas. And I thought it was sort of only a matter of time before he got a chance with the senior team. And I think as you say, was pretty impressive. Impressive in the sense that he was really confident, with the ball at his feet. There was still some, teething issues in regards to, that relationship communication with his teammates and things. A couple of bits where I think, Jones tried to clip it in for him to go in behind, but he'd come to receive it short and some stuff like that. But generally, I think, he was. It was a really nice moment for him to come on, especially that first piece of skill that you mentioned, and then wins a free kick that, unfortunately, Omo put straight into the wall. But
did you want to give your votes for this game?
Sure. It's weird because the 3 points I've given is someone that I haven't actually really mentioned that much, but when he came off the bench, made a really big impact on the game and us going forward. Was really direct with the ball, really willing to take players on in the final third, and that is Miller. I gave 2 to Simons, who, as I sort of said before, I think just was ticking things along in the midfield without being spectacular, but I think played his role. And then I'm going to give a point to Panda, for a performance that defied my expectations, I suppose.
I think that's it, and I've given Panda the 3, but it probably is largely that I had quite low expectations on him after that pre-season, and I thought he actually looked really good. Thought he made some. I mean, not that many saves because there wasn't that many saves to make, but I thought he commanded his box reasonably well. I thought he did come for a couple of crosses and caught them in some cases. So I take your point on the potentially being a bit at fault for the goal. So maybe I should have docked him a little bit for that, but it just was such an impressive display. I think because my base was so low for him that's probably why I've given him the 3. I agree on Miller. I gave him the 2. I do wonder a little bit just how much is down to first game of the season, 60 minutes in, everyone's kind of getting a bit tired, and he's got the fresh legs. He comes on, and he's going to look a lot better. So I'll be really interested to see, for example, if he starts Thursday morning, I should say, against Sheffield Wednesday. Gets a full 90 minutes, how he looks after that. But I thought he was, for what we got from him, I thought he was terrific. Really added some directness and some energy, which is exactly what we need on the wings. And then Jarvis for the one, I guess, for a pretty similar reason, but for the other side, I thought he did some really nice things. And maybe it's me being a bit coloured by the fact that they were sort of the only ones making things happen in that second half. And like you said with Simons, I thought Simons was great in the first half, and Mellum as well. Probably flagged a little bit with their energy levels, but I thought in the first half when we were looking to counter, their passing and picking through the Bristol City press was really excellent. So I think there's a few pretty positive signs amongst the players outside of maybe a couple of poorer performances. But yeah, a better start to the season than we perhaps would have hoped for. So hopefully something to build on there. We did see some business done in the transfer window finally after, what's the expression with London buses? You wait for one and two suddenly come along. And we did have Rasiopi, goalkeeper signing from Young Boys last week. It would have been maybe Wednesday or Thursday, with then Finley Burns confirmed the next day and then Liam Miller the day after that. So sort of 3 and 3 or 3 and 4, I think it ended up being, which was good to get some business over the line. Like, these are names that we've sort of had floating around, and as we're sort of joking in the chat, it's apparently confirmed, it's apparently done. Good to actually have the club confirm the signings, have them holding up the shirts and lock it all in. But, good to have competition at goalkeeper. Good to have Finley Burns, who, had an excellent season last year with Stevenage, as sort of almost like the new Alfie Jones, where he can play that centre midfield role or centre back role. So got a bit of flexibility there. And then Miller, who we've already talked about. So I guess 3 pretty positive signings.
Yeah, I think certainly I'm reasonably excited to see this goalkeeper. Play Champions League last season, so it's probably going to be close to one of the highest like caliber, I suppose, goalkeepers we've probably signed, in terms of having played at the highest levels. I think Finley Burns is a nice, exciting young, good loan option again from Man City, and I saw in the paper that Liam Delap gave him the good word on us to help convince him. So that was good. And Miller looks like, I mean, we sort of knew what to expect, but it's good to see that he's come essentially fit and firing, and hit the ground running, at least in terms of performance, even without any direct output.
Yeah, and I guess on a 4-year deal as well at that age, like, it's a good investment. It's the sort of player that we want, and we've been saying for ages, like, the more of these signings that are permanents, the better, because it just sets us up to protect us next summer from having sort of a similar situation as this summer. So, Ratiopi, Miller, both as permanents is great business. Supposedly, Zambrano was in the crowd for the game as well. I think he's just waiting on his work permits. I'm hoping that's not one of those ones that just sort of ends up dragging on and on. So hopefully we see that confirmed in the next day or two. Supposedly a striker coming in on a permanent deal before the weekend.
Someone said Aaron Connolly was in the crowd too. We're going to re-sign him.
Well, I did say, and I actually saw a picture of him there. So he was definitely there. But I mean, Cyrus Christie was at one of the preseason games as well. I saw the theory, which I think makes the most sense, which was perhaps he was still clearing out his belongings from Hull and, just came along as a guest of the club sort of thing. I think makes the most sense. I don't know. It's such a weird one, right, Connolly? Because first half of, like, I feel like everyone just always forgets just how good he actually was first half of last season. Like, was it the Blackburn game? He pops up with the 2 goals to win the game for us. Coventry, I think he got the equaliser. A few others like that. Like, he scored 8 or 9 goals for us. Like, let's not make it out to be that he's a Danny Graham or something. So he's obviously got issues with his attitude, perhaps, or I guess maybe more in terms of focus is maybe a better way to put it. I think, as we saw in his loan spell when he got injured against Stoke, I think it was, or QPR, when he injured his foot, it really rattled him. And then again last season with the Angus Gunn incident, I think didn't help. But it's the sort of thing where I think I've seen rumours with him going to Bristol Rovers or back to the League of Ireland or something like that. I think unfortunately for him, that's the sort of club that he needs to go to really sort of. And look, I mean, he came here on a 1-year deal last year where he was almost trying to prove himself as much as the club was sort of assessing his viability. So he seems very much aware that he has these issues to work through. And you think if he couldn't even get himself up on a 1-year deal with the incentive of a longer term deal here, there's clearly other stuff going on for him. So yeah, I don't think there's too much in that one. But stranger things have happened, so who knows?
We'll sign him on less wages.
Well, that's it, and that's what I'm sort of like. For him to come in on like he'd have to be on like almost a pay as you play sort of deal to make that worth it. But look again, a fit and firing Aaron Connolly is actually a very good player. So I'm not like I wouldn't be kind of like outraged if something like that happened. But I don't quite see it. But yeah, look, apparently a striker is coming in. Apparently, I think Baz was saying it's someone not from England. So maybe a German striker that Volta knows. Who knows? I do get intrigued when it's players that we've just got no names for, because I'm like, it could be quite fun that we just get this signing announced out of nowhere or something that just happens quite quickly. So sort of like Rasiopi, just name popped up and he signed in like 2 days. I was like, oh, that's quite a fun one. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens there. But I think Zambrano is really and Hughes, I guess, is the other one. Don't know how I feel about like I try and imagine being in Wigan's shoes if you had another club saying, yeah, we've agreed the deal, the player wants to come, blah blah blah, like unsettling your club captain on the eve of the new season. I don't know if I'd love that. From a whole perspective, you love having a Jun talking about the player, and you have Tan sort of saying it's basically suggesting it's pretty close to happening. But from a Wigan perspective, it probably doesn't feel great, and you worry that you don't want to damage the relationship where the club basically just says, stuff you guys, we're not going to sell to you. But in saying that, it does sound like that's reasonably close. It seems like it's a payment structure sort of negotiation. So I guess we'll see if that one happens too.
Yeah, I think, definitely another striker needs to come in. But the Hughes, I think, would be a really good signing. Sounds like it's going to be, that's probably going to be almost our biggest outlay of the season if he comes. But I think one of those where a lot of potential for growth and on sale value and obviously a lot of potential just to have an impact with us this season. So
he seems right in that mold of like a Harry Maguire or a Jacob Greaves, sort of ball playing young English centre back, where the risk, even with a big fee, the risk feels reasonably low. Where outside of touchwood, a serious injury, I can't see too much downside on the deal. But so it's an exciting one from that perspective. So I guess we'll see what happens there. But otherwise, we can talk about some football. So we've got first round of the League Cup Thursday morning against Sheffield Wednesday before we have Plymouth this weekend back in the league. It's an interesting sort of situation where I feel like you want to let guys like Liam Miller and stuff have a decent run out against Sheffield Wednesday just to get them up to speed and playing with everyone, but you also don't want to burn them out before the league game. So it'll be interesting to see what we do with the lineup midweek. And Sheffield Wednesday under Danny Roll, I mean, it's interesting actually playing both of these teams, given that they've just played each other and Sheffield Wednesday beat Plymouth 4-0. It'll be an interesting way to see which side, whether Sheffield Wednesday were really that good or whether Plymouth were really that bad as to how these two games go. But I guess starting with the Sheffield Wednesday game, how do you see a wholesale changes or sort of keep the same lineup and keep the momentum going?
I was thinking about this before, and I wasn't like, I think honestly, we're early enough in the season. We had there's not a huge physical load on the players as of yet. As long as the fixture list isn't too congested in the next few weeks, then I see no reason why you wouldn't. I can see maybe a couple of changes, like as you say, maybe Miller. Maybe he starts. Maybe you drop Giles into left back, and you give Jacob a rest. For
maybe
a game
Burns
like
for
this,
McLaughlin or
and
something.
possibly Burns. Yeah, maybe Burns starts. But I think.
Would you give Rasiopi a start, or would you keep Panda in goal?
I actually wouldn't. I probably would. I'd like to see them both. Go. I know you haven't had as much time in the system, but you've seen the game, this is what we want to try and do, and just see how he goes. And at least you've got something to sort of compare. You can make a genuine decision about who's the best option moving forward. Then,
because you'd hate to be, if we got knocked out and then you're sitting there in October or something going, geez, Panda's not going great, but do we really want to throw Ratsiopi in? At least this way, you like you say, you've got that baseline to say, okay, well, we've seen them both in a competitive game. We know what he can offer.
Yeah, I think the other thing, like for Rasiopi to come, like as we said before, he played Champions League last season, to come here and if he just sits as second keeper, like sits on the bench every week and doesn't get any game time at all, I think you'd be pretty peeved about that situation. I guess like that's true for any goalkeeper or any sort of like not first 11 player that you want to be playing, but I feel like for goalkeepers it's a little bit rougher because there's only one spot they can really go into.
Yeah.
So probably those couple of changes, maybe a couple of the new ones. I mean, I wouldn't hate seeing. I guess I'd probably just fill the bench with some of the young fellas. To be honest, I'd really like to see Jarvis get another go. I'd like to see like Cincy Hall come off the bench or something.
Sellers Fleming was the other one he's one that we didn't even talk about with the Bristol City game. He was the one that put the ball in the box for the penalty. He looked pretty good off the bench, I thought.
Yeah, I think over the last 12 months or so, he's made a few appearances and just sort of growing and settling, easing into that senior football, beginning to sort of have like a genuine impact off the bench, which is, what you want. So I think all positive. I'm not super confident about the result against for this cup match. I guess it's one of those ones where it just really comes down to both teams and what emphasis they place on it. Like if Chef Wednesday come out and they don't care about the cup and they just want to go up the league and they put out their under 21s, then all of a sudden, it's a game that gives us again more opportunities to play and work out the kinks in the system and all those sorts of things. And Walter seems like the kind of guy who just wants to, or the gist I get is that every game he plays, he wants to win. So I feel like he'll put out a reasonably strong side, but I am worried that a team that put 4 against Plymouth, regardless of how bad they are, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of swagger coming into this could expose, some of those holes, issues that we can have.
Yeah, which to be honest, I wouldn't hate. Like, I would rather we get a belting in the League Cup and have that as the wake up call, or the chance to expose or to highlight areas that we need to improve on. I'd rather that come in the League Cup than in the league. So in that sense, I think it's not a bad order. Like, it's not bad that we've got Chef Wednesday in the Cup and Plymouth in the league. I'd rather that than the other way around. And if we had Plymouth in the League Cup and you go, oh, we're going to belt them 3-0 and think everything's great, and then lose in the league. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, it'll be interesting to see what Chef Wednesday do and how they approach the cup game. But yeah, Volta seems very much that competitive guy. And like we said, like Sellers Fleming, Jarvis, Sydney Hall, maybe even Ashby. I mean, like, I saw he was on the bench for the league game as well. Like, whether those guys get a look in, as well as sprinkling in Mellum and everyone else. And obviously it'll be interesting to see if we have any signings. Probably would have to be by today in order to really be potentially starting in that cup game. But it'll be a good. I think, like you say as well, like, it's early enough in the season that you don't need to really rotate anyone for a rest. It's maybe it'd be interesting for someone like Coyle, because you can't really, like, with Drame out injured. I guess Coyle just gets thrown back in when he's probably one of the first players I'd think of that might want to rest. So unless we play a kid at right back is potentially the option as well. But and like, I don't think we'd start Oscar up top, even if he's our only striker. We'd probably start, maybe Jarvis would get a go up top. Not sure, but yeah, are you? I mean, it's such a hard game to predict, given we don't know how seriously each team will take it. But do you care?
Not really, but 2-0 to Sheffield.
Fair enough. Yeah, I always like to progress in the cup, because I say it every year, but you never know. All of a sudden, you find yourself couple of rounds in, you're playing a Premier League side, you knock them off, and all of a sudden it's a great cup run and you're really enjoying yourself. So we've got a small squad at the moment, so I guess you don't want to have too much fixture congestion. But at the same time, if we're going to be bringing in a couple of players, 5-6 more players, having more games to, try out different formations and different setups, it never hurts. So
what was it? Was it not last season? The season before when we got against, was it Everton, and then Longman scored that bloody cracker.
Yeah, I think that was FA Cup, but cheers. And that's all it is. Like, you do, like, those sorts of games stick in the memory because you come up against a Premier League side and you get the goal or get the result. That can make a see. Like, I think that was the Grant McCann. It must have been just before Grant McCann left, but that was like that championship season under Grant McCann. You go, it's such a nothing season otherwise, but you get a fun result against Everton, and
I think that was when Longman he was on loan still from Brighton before we signed him on the permanent. But
look, we'll talk Plymouth then. Back in the league, and Wayne Rooney in charge of Plymouth, going down 4-0 to Sheff Wednesday. There was a managerial departure yesterday, but it was Ryan Lowe from Preston. It wasn't Rooney from Plymouth, although I think I've seen some speculation that because Ryan Lowe used to manage Plymouth, that maybe he's lining up a return there if Rooney doesn't work out, which would be interesting. But certainly not the start that they would have wanted under Rooney. In a way, it almost feels like it adds more pressure to the game for us, because it almost feels like, geez, if you don't get like a decent win against them, you're really missing out on a gimme 3 points. So in a weird way, I'm actually more stressed about this game now, especially because like if Plymouth come out and beat us, it just feels like such a sucker punch. So it's kind of weird in that way. But I don't know. I just can't feel confident about our side at the moment. Like, I just don't know where the goals are coming from. So I'm a little bit worried from that perspective. Like, I could see it being a 0-0. I could see Rooney kind of freaking out and just going super defensive and it being a 0-0. But I don't know. What do you think?
I'm just trying to think of the game where we've played Rooney's sides, and we did.
So we beat Birmingham. Was it 2-0? I think in your second game. Yeah, and maybe Derby would have beaten us, and Derby. We always seen the sort of side that gives those 3 points to the relegation battlers. But
I just think because he went a ridiculous amount of games without like getting fucking anything. He's so just terrible as a manager. So if anything, it could work out in our favour in that sense that they're going to be probably disorganised and crap, and it's probably going to work in our favour that they're not going to be able to take advantage of the mistakes that we make. I'd probably, regardless of whether they'd been beaten 4-0 or by Wednesday or not, I think I probably would have been a little bit more confident about this game anyway. I just don't really think Plymouth were a high, like a really a top end of the table sort of team and squad, and having Rooney just adds to that. So I just don't think they're particularly strong. I like Bristol City. I think that they sort of always seem to be sort of mid-table-ish, sometimes a little bit higher or whatever. But I think they're probably reasonably equivalent to us. Where I think we're probably stronger than Plymouth, despite obviously the end of last season. But I wasn't going to bring that one up, but I think we've I reckon when you got the likes of Miller and the guys that we have, the squad that we have, I think I think we can get the result there. So I tend to agree. I don't know exactly where we don't yet look like a free scoring team. So I'd probably just tip like a 1-0 over Plymouth, which I'd take 4 points out of the first two games. I'd be happy with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. If we can get the win in this one, that's a much better start than I was expecting. And you have to think, with signings still to come, that gives us a great springboard to actually, starting the season quite well. I reckon I could see a 0-0. I think it's interesting. I mean, their biggest attacking threat is Morgan Whitaker, but he looks like he's pretty checked out as well. So he's probably on his way out. Look, it is interesting because, like, you think Oscar puts that chance in the first half from Giles. We go 1-0 up, but suddenly it looks a whole lot different. So like we do have the chances. Maybe if Miller gets a start as well, like you were sort of saying for the cup, but like if Miller starts at left wing, Giles at left back, which is an interesting one because Giles hasn't played left back all preseason, so I don't really know what's going on there. But it's not a terrible lineup. So yeah, I mean, look, having not seen Plymouth at all, I can't really tell how poor they actually are under Rooney, or if Chef Wednesday, because that's the thing as well. Chef Wednesday under Roll have actually been quite good. So there's also that side of it. But yeah, I reckon a 0-0's maybe on the cards in this one, unfortunately, for our first midnight game. So we'll get to stay up for that one. Yeah, but otherwise, look, I think that just about rounds things up. Hopefully we get a bit more transfer activity in the next day or two to sort of get things kicked into gear before the weekend. Would be good to have a few more bodies in the building before this game against Plymouth. But otherwise, I think that's just about it. So thanks for joining me for this one, Dan.
Yeah, no worries. Probably see you again in another week or two for some more football talk.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, hopefully there's a couple of positive results against Chef Wednesday and Plymouth, and we'll be back next week to chat all about them. But until next time, come on, City.